Hi, everyone. Welcome to this special live at our table conversation. I'm your host, Jamie Harrison. In light of the groundbreaking passage of the Epstein Files Transparency Act and Trump's sudden reversal to support and then sign the bill, I thought it would be great to reach out to one of the lead sponsors, our good friend, Congressman Khanna from California. Congressman Khanna has been on the front lines of fighting for the release of these files for months. And finally, it looks like we may see some real transparency on this. And that's thanks to him and his leadership. So I'm thrilled to welcome back to At Our Table, Congressman Khanna from California. Hey, Congressman, how are you?
Jamie, an honor to be back. I appreciate the second invite.
Well, and then next week, you are our first best of At Our Table. Your episode that we recorded earlier is going to replay for the Thanksgiving holiday. So while people are eating their Thanksgiving dinner, they can hear our conversation, which really was one of our best this season. So thank you for that as well.
Well, thank you, Jamie. It was one of my best because I think people will see it was a deep conversation.
It really was.
It was not just the talking points. It was sort of who we are as Democrats and as Americans.
Yeah, it really was. And thank you again for doing that. Now, if you could just walk us through what happened this last week. When did you know for sure that you had the signatures to force the vote to release the Epstein files? Because we heard all the rumors about the Situation Room and Trump dragging people there to sit down with Pam Bondi. Unprecedented attempts to stop this. When did you know that you finally had the signatures to force the vote to release this bill?
Well, first, when Congress was reopened, Adelita Grijalva was sworn in, and that was our 218th signature on the discharge petition. And that was the effort of the whole House Democratic Caucus, Hakeem Jeffries, Catherine Clark, Joe Neguse, and others who made sure that there was no funny business, that she would be sworn in. And that sent the entire Republican leadership and Donald Trump into a panic. They did not think that they would get there, that we would actually get to 218 signatures. That's when they started to put in this incredible pressure on Lauren Boebert, calling her to the Situation Room, calling some of these other members and threatening to unendorse them. And Massey and I, behind the scenes, were talking to these three women who had heard the survivors, and they kept assuring us that they were not going to buckle and take their names off the petition. Actually, let me back up. They were trying to do this a day before the petition Adelita Grijalva was sworn in, because once she was sworn in and she signed, you can't untake your name off a petition. So the day before, there was this intense pressure. Those three women held strong. Then Massey and I basically set up a whip operation with the Republicans, and we thought we were going to get 50 to 60 Republicans to do this. And that's when Donald Trump says, I'm unendorsing Marjorie Taylor Greene, and goes berserk. And we are scrambling to see, okay, maybe he's going to be able to get his caucus back in line. But our whip numbers hold. And within 48 hours, Donald Trump reverses himself in a stunning reversal. And he basically bows to math and reality that he was going to lose probably 60 of Republicans on that vote. He endorses it. And that's how we get the outcome we do.
And even after that point, Speaker Johnson was still trying his best to throw curveballs, and he seemed to be really upset once this bill passed on the floor of the House. And you passed it with every member of the House, with the exception of one vote, right?
We've ended up passing it 427 to 1. Jamie, in this day and age, you don't get post office votes that big. It was a big vote. And that morning, the survivors came to the Capitol, and I can't underestimate and emphasize enough how important that was. They came twice to give this momentum. And I think members heard this. They didn't want to be on the side of voting against those brave women. The speaker still was scrambling. I don't know if you saw footage of him that night. I mean, he looked grumpy and miserable. That Trump sold him out by reversing. I mean, think about this. Trump is picking a Democratic bill, because ultimately it was like Khanna bill. It was Massey's discharge petition over his own Speaker of the House. And then the speaker's pleading with Toon come on, let's put a big hole in it and an exception. And Thune ignores him. And the UC, thanks to Senator Schumer, my bill in the Senate, it passes within hours. You know how rare this is, I know, Deborah,
It's
because you've been
extremely
on the
rare. And folks,
House floor.
just so you know, UC is unanimous consent. So basically, the bill goes over the Senate. Chuck Schumer gets to the floor, asks for unanimous consent to pass this bill from the House, and it passes without any amendments, any changes, and it goes straight to Donald Trump.
And you have the speaker putting pressure, saying make amendments. You have Donald Trump saying we need to take a look at it in the Senate and make amendments. And they basically say, no, we're going to ignore that. Any senator could have objected. Any Republican senator could have objected and said we want amendments. Not a single one did. And the speaker is just floored. I mean, it really was a legislative miracle pulled off because of the survivors, because of the unity of the House Democratic Caucus. We did not lose a single House member throughout this process and the advocacy because of the unity of the Senate Democratic Caucus. But I think, Jamie, what this showed is if you build a coalition, Donald Trump will cave to Congress.
Yeah.
That, we can assert ourselves as Article 1, as a co-equal branch, and take the fight to Donald Trump, and he will surrender, as opposed to what Mike Johnson has been, which is supplicants for the White House.
Well, this is a real win for the American people, but most importantly, a real win for the victims of Epstein and his many collaborators. And also just folks who have been sexually assaulted to actually see Congress take this assertive step forward, despite all of the headwinds coming from the White House, just really big. As you step back and think about it, how, as the author of this legislation, as someone who really was a driving force behind it, how does all this make you feel? And what are you hearing from your constituents?
It's incredible. I was just at the airport coming back home to California, and someone stopped me and said, thank you, because I'm a survivor. I mean, I think that this has impacted so many people who have faced assault, who have faced abuse, rape. The story was horrific. And JB, I'm a policy guy. I started out because I thought this Epstein class rigged the system, betrayed the system, and that we really need to stand up to them. But this is probably the most emotionally harrowing experience I had, meeting with those survivors over the last 5 months. You had women tell me that they recruited other junior high and high school students to go get raped or abused. Wow. Because they didn't want to be the ones being raped or abused. And 30 years later, they're still living with the trauma and the guilt of that. I mean, it was just heartrending. You have women telling me that every time their daughter goes out, they fear the kind of sexual assault that can happen to them. We had an ugly episode, a disgusting episode, probably the most corrupt scandal in recent American history, of a rape island set up for rich and powerful men to abuse and rape women. And so this is standing up finally for survivors, for women, and for justice.
And what are the survivors asking you all to do now? What's the next step? We have this done. The legislation's passed. The bill requires the files to be released by the Department of Justice in 30 days. Do you expect that deadline to be met? What are the consequences for the Trump administration if they fail to act? What do the survivors want Congress to do now?
The survivors want us to keep fighting. They don't want us to take the word of this administration that has misled and lied about these Epstein files for the past year. They want us to actually make sure these files get released. And what is it that people want in these files? They want to know who the other rich and powerful men were who went to the island, who abused women, who trafficked in women. That's what people want to understand. And so I'm going to be working with Thomas Massie and some of the senators, Murkowski and Merkley in the Senate, who were the co-sponsors on that side, to make sure we're meeting with Pam Bondi, to make sure we understand what the process is going to be on the release, to make sure that they don't violate the law by engaging in classification when the law calls for maximum declassification. But Jamie, here's what gives me some level of confidence. Now you have any Justice Department official who, if they violate the law of the land, can be prosecuted not just in Trump's administration, but when we have a new Democratic administration that actually follows the law. In the past, if you were a person at Justice or at FBI or at Treasury and you didn't comply, well, you weren't complying with Trump's campaign
Mm-hmm.
promise. But there was no law requiring Donald Trump to release these files. So you couldn't be prosecuted or held in contempt of Congress. Now you can. And that is one thing I want to make crystal clear, that people will be held accountable if they don't follow the law. And that's why I'm confident we can get these files.
That's true. There were talks that the DOJ folks thought that the DOJ was going to try to gum up the works in some fashion or form, uh, start investigations into other folks, and so therefore saying, "Well, you can't release these files." Are you hearing any of that, or are there ways to bypass Pam Bondi, who we know is not justice is not blind when it comes to her?
Absolutely
Yeah.
not. I mean, she's used this for political means. And that's the one thing you hear from the survivors. We do not want this politicized. We don't want Pam Bondi targeting selectively Democratic public officials. We want all the facts, all the people out. Here are two recourses we have. First, the bill clearly says that those files have to be held temporarily and in the most narrowly tailored way. So if you have career justice officials doing things broader in holding documents for the purpose of concealment, they subject themselves to prosecution. Secondly, even when you look at those political motivated investigations, that's only maybe a couple percent of the files. So yes, we have to be vigilant. We have to push to get those documents released that can only be held temporarily, but we can still to get a lot of the other files out. And what Massey and I are pushing for is, let's start to get the emails and photos on Epstein's computers. Let's start to get the witness memorandum of all the rich and powerful men who were interviewed. Let's try to get the correspondence between Epstein and these men. That all can come out.
Well, as we wrap up this, some of your key collaborators on this were Republicans. You and Congressman Massey worked hand in glove on this. Do you think your work here will reignite bipartisan collaboration in the House? It really has been on life support. Somebody who really cut his teeth in the House in my days is working for then House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn. And there were moments in which we could work across the aisle, and there were a lot of moments. That's few and far between now in this Congress. Do you think this will really sort of reignite that spirit to work across the aisle?
It's a step, I have to say, because I just was on a plane reading Mr. Clyburn's book, and I read your beautiful tribute to him as in your foreword, talking about how you were in his class. And I didn't know the details of all of even Robert Small's story until I read the book. I really hope people will read that book. As you point out, Mr. Clyburn's more than a political leader. He's a teacher
Yep.
for the country, and an extraordinary point. But one of the things he has taught me as you is that you do extend grace and you extend an open heart on working with the other side without compromising your principles. In fact, he was ribbing me that Nancy Mace was one of the signers of the petition. But he said, look, bro, you build the coalitions. I think it's a step, but there is so much damage done. And the damage done has been because on the other side, they've chosen to work for Donald Trump instead of working in Congress as Article 1. If they decide, look, we want to be in Congress, we want to actually assert our power, then there are areas like banning private equity from buying up single family homes, like lowering the cost of medicine, like making sure that we're not getting these super PACs into our politics, like making sure members don't become lobbyists right after Congress. There are areas where we can work to build these coalitions. And I think that's ultimately what we showed, that you can take on Donald Trump and you can win. You don't have to be a supplicant to him.
Well, Congressman, I want to thank you again for taking the time to join us today. But I want to say this. Uh, what you did with this legislation is the reason why people still have hope that they can find leaders that they send to Washington, D.C. to actually get work done on behalf of the American people. It really is a model that I hope other members of Congress and young folks who are thinking about running for state house or state senate or even Congress itself can take as a model, that it's about listening to constituents, seeing the hurt and pain that they have, and then taking your efforts to legislate and do things in order to address that. And you really set the model for that for this particular Congress. And I want to say thank you for your leadership. We really, really appreciate it.
And that's high praise coming from you, Jamie, because you have modeled that kind of leadership as a DNC chair and in all your public service. And we have a high bar to live up to with people like Mr. Clyburn. But I appreciate you saying that about young people, because there's so much cynicism in this country. But you can make an enormous difference. I have so much faith in this new generation. And I hope people will take heart that they can get here, get into their state capitals, be on city council, build unique coalitions, try to see that area for common ground, and then we can start to move our country past this incredibly ugly chapter of Trumpism.
Well, Congressman, I wish you a happy Thanksgiving with you and your family next week. Enjoy some time, just being with family, and there's so much to be thankful for, even despite all of the chaos in the world and in our country. There's still a lot to be grateful for and thankful for. So thank you, and everyone, thank you for tuning in to Live at Our Table. We'll be down next week for Thanksgiving, but you can always catch up on past episodes, including our in-person sit down with Congressman Khanna from a few weeks back. So have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everyone, and we will see you all soon at our table.